In early December of 2022, a Los Angeles attorney shared the story of how he was robbed by two women whom he'd invited at his home in the Hollywood Hills. The unnamed man told a local media outlet that he'd met the women, only identified as Holly and Brittany, while bar hopping in Beverly Hills on July the 25th of 2022. He reported that he, along with his friends and the women, decided to bring the party back to his home. After his friends had left at around 3 a.m., the lawyer went into his bedroom with Holly and Brittany, but remembered that things weren't adding up as the women were randomly texting before they started giving him vodka shots. He became unconscious and woke up roughly 15 hours later to find his home ransacked. The lawyer believed that the drinks Holly and Brittany had given him were laced with drugs, as he'd reportedly never before passed out from alcohol. The women made off with cash and 3 Rolex watches, which the victim estimated were worth close to $18,000. Still, the man stated that they could have done a lot worse and felt fortunate to have emerged from the incident with just his possessions stolen. Surveillance photos of the suspects were released by the authorities, but as of the latest updates, they hadn't been arrested. Number 6. Summer Desjardins and Daniel Wago. In April of 2020, an unnamed Michigan man talked to 24-year-old Summer Desjardins on Facebook and invited her to his home. Macomb Daily would later report that they discussed the meetup as an intercourse for drugs type of arrangement. However, Desjardins had actually been planning to rob the victim with her boyfriend, 21-year-old Daniel Wago. When Desjardins arrived at the address, Wago forced his way inside with a handgun, announcing the robbery. The victim refused to comply with his demands, and a confrontation ensued, during the course of which Wago shot him in the torso. He and his girlfriend then fled the scene in a Chevrolet Cavalier, but were tracked down through their social media profiles and arrested later that same day. The victim was taken to a Detroit hospital and pronounced to be in stable condition. In 2021, Wago was given a sentence of 15 to 30 years in prison after pleading guilty to armed robbery, attempted murder, possession of a weapon by a felon, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. That same year, Desjardins pleaded no contest to conspiracy to commit armed robbery in exchange for the dismissal of other charges. In September, the mother of 2, who admitted that she had methamphetamine addiction, was sentenced to 6 to 28 years in prison. Number 5. Luke Lembrick. In the summer of 2019, Australian man Luke Lembrick, aged 29, matched with Lisa Ann Price, then in her early 30s, on Tinder, and they started texting each other. In December, Price sent him a photo of herself and another woman, claiming that she wanted to bring her to his residence. The duo arrived at the Condell Park home in Western Sydney, which Lembrick shared with his mother, Robin, who was terminally ill from bone cancer. The trio went to Lembrick's bedroom, where they partook in alcohol and cocaine. At some point during the rendezvous, he showed the women a stack of bills amounting to around $15,000, as well as a blazer that had cash overflowing from its pockets. The display of wealth reportedly gave Price the idea to do him over, and in the early hours of December the 7th, 3 men raided Lembrick's home. They were subsequently identified as Joseph Nem, Bilal Rahim, and Viliami Tuafahima. A confrontation ensued, during the course of which Lembrick was stabbed multiple times with a knife that had reportedly been taken from his home. Robin was reported to have witnessed the attack that had floored Lembrick, who then told her, "I'm going to die, Mum. I'm going to die." The emergency services were called to the home at around 2:45 a.m. Paramedics found Lembrick in critical condition and were unable to save him, as he succumbed to a stab wound that had pierced his heart. The 5 people connected to his death were arrested in the aftermath. Nem, Bilal, and Tuafahima were charged with murder, as well as aggravated break-in and entering with intent to commit a serious indictable offense in company, among other charges. Price was brought before the court as an accessory before the fact to murder, in addition to being charged with aggravated break-in and entering. Shireen Rizk, aged 46, the woman who was reported to have accompanied her to the residence, was charged with being an accessory before the fact to murder. All 5 defendants were ordered to stand trial in February of 2023. Number 4. Incident in Fort Lauderdale. While out at the rooftop at One Willow Bar in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a man shared drinks with two women until the early hours of December the 4th of 2022. They exchanged numbers, and about an hour later, he met them again outside of Rock Bar and drove them to his Lauderdale-by-the-Sea home for cocktails. The man would later report that he had never lost sight of his drink while they were at his house. It's believed that they had relations, after which the man fell asleep. Upon waking up, he realized that his Platinum Amex credit card had been taken from his back pocket while his $25,000 Submariner Blueface Rolex watch had been removed from his wrist. He texted the women regarding the whereabouts of his valuables but received no answer back, so he reported them to the Broward County Sheriff's Office. The authorities launched an investigation and released clear surveillance footage of the suspects that had been captured at the rooftop bar. They were described as being in their mid-20s with long dark hair, and one of them was reported as having a scorpion tattoo on her left thigh. Number 3. Aeolian Wallace. Arkansas woman Aeolian Wallace met a man on social media on June the 13th of 2022 and invited him to her home in Pine Bluff. The situation turned violent not long after his arrival as the man tried to rob her. The unnamed assailant tasered Wallace in the neck before he started choking her, prompting her to brandish the gun she kept for protection. The man took the weapon off her, then started hitting her in the head with it until she gave him her wallet. The vicious attack left her with a broken nose, deep gashes on her forehead, and a severely swollen face. The damage Wallace had sustained was visible in an interview that the woman gave in the assault's aftermath. While speaking to the media, Wallace blamed herself for her ordeal and for letting a stranger into her home, urging other women, be careful who you talk to, do your research. She also stated an intention of leaving Arkansas for her home state of California. Number 2. Joseph Trevor. In the early hours of April the 20th of 2019, English teenagers Megan Newton and Joseph Trevor met at a taxi rank in Newcastle-under-Lyme. Earlier in the night, 18-year-old Newton had gone to the Kiln nightclub after finishing her shift at a chip shop. Trevor had been taken into custody by the police, who confiscated a bag of ketamine found in his possession. He was released and told he'd have to return at a later date. Suspicions about his rapid release would later be focused on the connection of his parents, who worked for Staffordshire Police. But they were eventually cleared of any wrongdoing. Suspicions of interference persisted nonetheless and were enhanced by the fact that a few years prior, Trevor had been accused of abusing a teenager in a case that ended up not being prosecuted. Upon his chance meeting with Newton on April the 20th, Trevor claimed that he didn't want to go home to his parents in his state at the time, as he was severely intoxicated from drugs and alcohol. He was a semi-professional soccer player, and Newton was a junior soccer coach with aspirations of becoming a sports therapist. They went to the same school but were largely strangers to each other. In what would be deemed as an act of kindness, Newton invited Trevor to her apartment to sleep off his intoxication. CCTV cameras would capture them walking into her Stoke-on-Trent home shortly before 4 a.m. At some point in the hours that followed, Trevor repeatedly forced himself on Newton. After abusing the teenager, he strangled her and stabbed her in the back 9 times. He abandoned her on the bed, naked and splayed as she bled to death. He was then captured by CCTV, exiting Newton's home using her key, which he then discarded. Trevor's composure upon leaving the gruesome murder scene would be described as remarkably composed. He was arrested later that day after Newton's mutilated body was discovered. Trevor subsequently pleaded guilty to murder and another 2 counts stemming from the abuse, for which he was sentenced to a minimum term of 21 years and 65 days in prison on February the 17th of 2020. Number 1. James Squires. On February the 21st of 2019, an Englishwoman saw James Squires outside a shop in Evington, Leicester. She'd seen him begging on the street in the past and assumed he was homeless. It was a cold winter day, so the unnamed 45-year-old woman invited Squires to her home to warm up, offering him food, tea, and cider. They talked for a few hours, after which the woman asked Squires to leave so that she could go to bed. It was at that point that Squires, who'd posed as a rough sleeper but in fact had a home, ruthlessly attacked her. He punched the victim twice, rendering her unconscious. Squires then persisted to strike and stomp her with such force that he broke her jaw and ruptured her right eye, which later had to be surgically removed. The victim regained her senses to find that she was covered in blood and bruises. Squires, who it was later determined was a heroin addict, was arrested. The only explanation he subsequently provided was that he'd fallen asleep in the victim's home and woke up to her punching him because she wanted him out. He claimed that he exploded and attacked her continuously for 10 to 15 minutes. A judge, however, suspected that drugs and alcohol had affected his memory, eventually pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm with intent, and was given a sentence of 7.5 years in prison. During an impact statement, his victim, who'd been fitted with a prosthetic eyeball, reported that she suffered from panic attacks and had become distrustful of people. Thanks for watching. Would you rather host a party for a crime boss at your home or try to smuggle $100,000 in cash across the border? Let us know in the comments section below.